Welcome, everybody, to this introduction practitioner interview. My name is Anita Craig, the founder of innerFLOW, and on today's call we have with us Evan Klisser, based in Cape Town, South Africa. Welcome, Evan, to the call.
Thanks, Anita. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here with us today and sharing as well. So for the viewers who are new to innerFLOW and may want to know just a little bit about who we are and what we're about, innerFLOW was born this year in a response to largely the situation on a planetary context and bringing together an offering through a diverse range of very skilled, experienced practitioners at this stage servicing online individuals and sometimes groups in the space of inner transformation and wellness on a very holistic level. And this time is particularly important on this planet as people are enforced or encouraged to rediscover things about themselves and turn more inwards, and really having to dig deep through some quite challenging circumstances that the situation of COVID and lockdown and these massive changes that we're all enduring and going through. And this service is primarily being put out to offer people this opportunity in a very guided, safe and supported way to take on the service of a guided facilitator, therapist, healer, coach, teacher, to the modalities that they offer for you to help to reorient, rediscover, repurpose, revision your lives even. So it could be on a minutiae scale, or it could be something very grand that you're dealing with. And on today's call, we're going to be exploring with Evan certain themes around his offerings. Now, I'd like to just take a moment to introduce you formally to Evan before we get into the actual dialogue with him. So, Evan's professional career began with a 6-year training in clinical psychology. Thereafter, he ventured more widely into personal development. And for many years, he ran shadow work retreats and EQ workshops in the private sector, and he also established himself in the corporate sector, working as a facilitator, a coach, and a consultant, and formed his own business as a result, offering these things. Running parallel with his career was an active spiritual journey, which took him through several religions initially. And later on, he traveled many times to India, seeking truth. He had many profound spiritual experiences along the way and on the ashram of his guru, which culminated in a magnificent and challenging Kundalini process. And after a 7-year period of seclusion, it resulted during which these capacities, these internal capacities, were built up inside of himself. And each capacity was named in dream by divinity itself and confirmed in various different ways. And the focus areas of these were spiritual coaching and teaching, energy transmission, and producing divine energy products. All in all, an absolute mysterious and mystical journey. Yet knowing Evan and having been part of his experience and his actual journey and watching it unfold, there's just this incredible integrated sense of Evan bringing these skills, these trainings, these learnings, and with this mystical element that has just brought it all together in this all-empowering, integral way of being and emerging to be of service in the world. So I'm really excited, Ev, that we have this time to just chat about this and make people aware of your journey and also these offerings that have come through you along the way. So anything you would like to add to the introduction or expand on or clarify more on for our viewers?
Thanks for that. Um, Maybe I should just start off explaining Kundalini, because it's this mysterious word, and I think it's misunderstood and sensationalized. I remember trawling the internet for years, just trying to really understand my own process and researching people's experiences and studies and pundits or scholars' writings on it, etc. And it was hard to actually come to grips with what it is. And eventually, I found some very clear texts on it. But what is Kundalini? Essentially, that's just a word in a particular lineage, the Vedas. And that's just one lineage, but in other spiritual traditions, ancient teachings, etc., it'll be called something different, but it is universal. It's still referring to the divine feminine and the intelligence of that divine feminine that controls everything in creation. And it has representation inside human beings and runs our lives and our bodies and our consciousness. And that really is what Kundalini is. And she, or as she's known as Shakti, divine power, that's feminine energy, she actually facilitates the raising of consciousness so that man can actually have an evolutionary pinnacle experience of what it's all about. What are we all here for? We're here to experience our true nature, which is love and bliss and peace and fundamental well-being. The things that, there's a spring inside of us, and it's just about how to tap it. But man looks outside of himself and chases objects, which is so natural, because that's our experience. You have an ice cream and you have pleasure. Fall in love, wow, it's intoxicating. Get a promotion, win the lotto, drive a fantastic car, dream of your own aeroplane, all these dreams. And what do we want? We want happiness, except it comes temporarily. We can't hold on to it. And the spiritual path and the way of Kundalini particularly is a way to learn to tap that internal spring and experience 24/7 these states of consciousness that are so pleasurable. It's there for us, but it takes training and effort. And if you do have a coach who's been there, who's had the direct experience to accompany you, well, it makes navigating the terrain even easier, because there's lots of things to be put into place to have the smoothest possible experience. So that's Kundalini. I can get more mystical, Anita, if you think it'll help, with where it is and what energy center. What do you think? What do you think your viewers want to hear?
Yeah, I think the basis, the foundation is really important just to touch on. And there's such a wealth that I can feel that could just be a fountain that comes through you. And maybe that's the opportunity down the line. Who knows, if we offer a series on Kundalini specifically, if people are interested in that. For now, though, I'd love to just circle into something around why are you choosing to do this work around Kundalini Care, offering this, and maybe exploring a little bit more practically around what it is that you do so that people are aware of the services available to them at this time.
Okay, thank you. So I've always had the spirit of teaching and helping. And as you mentioned, I studied clinical psychology, and I also had this parallel stream of exploring my spirituality. And what I've been given, the tremendous grace that I've received, especially in those 7 years of seclusion, and all the gifts and the teachings and just incredible stuff. I just feel like a mother cow when she sees her calf, the milk just starts flowing. I just want to share this. And I've had that feeling for quite a while, but I had to wait for what Ramakrishna, who's a divine incarnation from Calcutta, turn of the last century, or 2 centuries ago actually, and he said, you know, to be a self-proclaimed teacher is just not on. You need to wait for the badge of authority. And so I waited for the badge of authority, being obedient to divine command, and eventually it came. So there is a divine mandate, and I've received thousands of divine dreams, which are very helpful for people on the spiritual path, and they've wanted me to write that book for a while now. It just takes a long time to, you know, put it all together. And you know my
We're
process
all
around
looking forward to
that book.
that book coming out.
Yes, I know. Oh God, one day. So yeah, that all comes together, you know, just wanting to share the gifts. And as one, I've also noticed, I read about it, but I've noticed that as one progresses on the spiritual path, it just becomes so much less about you and so much more about others and wanting to help and uplift. So that's just lifted my own teaching, helping spirit to the next level. The divine mandate thrown in, the 7 years of experience in it, the badge of authority, and now it's okay, all right, let me just package this into what I can offer and what I can do and what that looks like. And should I go into that a little bit?
I'd love for you to share your services. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I work essentially one-on-one, and I'll supplement with retreats. I've run a few spiritual retreats. That was a fantastic experience. Those give people an immersion, you know, much deeper experience. You can go deeper. It's like 20-minute meditation, and then you need to carry on with your day. But if you're in the space for a few days, you can drop much deeper. Things happen in those spaces. But the one-on-one work, what I essentially do is bring together my understanding of Kundalini process, because a little bit about the energy system, which is the subtle body. And I think most people know about the energy centers, or what they call chakras. There's 7 of them, and Kundalini Shakti, to facilitate this process of being established in your true self, the mountaintop of love and bliss and peace and fundamental well-being. She resides in human beings at the base of the spine, and given certain circumstances and the flowering of your karma or your destiny based on your past experiences, really the effort you've made on the spiritual path, she will release herself. And then she needs to travel through various channels. There's 72,000 of them in the body. It's the same as acupuncture. The medical world accepts acupuncture, but they don't actually know how it works. They can't see on their X-ray machines. They can't see the meridians. They call them meridians. And it's the same principle, yet they know that if they insert a needle in this particular place, the headache will go away. And on that basis, the predictability and the effect, they accept that acupuncture works without being able to show the measurable channels that it passes through. Well, Kundalini, it's exactly the same thing. It's not meridians, it's called nadis. These channels that she has to move through. And she moves through the channels to her destination. And she is power consciousness, because it takes power to create a universe. Incredible power. And then she makes her way through these channels, and she then unites with her beloved on the top of the head, a point on the top of the head. And that's where pure consciousness resides. It doesn't move, it's just steady truth. And that union is what probably one of the biggest attainments is in spirituality. And one does go beyond that, but for another time. So the channels that she moves through have to be cleared, because things collect in there, much like when one has heart problems. One may have accumulated debris, like they call it plaque, in the heart, in the arteries, and they have to be removed. Similarly, from many thousands of past lives and this life, and emotions and toxins and everything also have to be cleared out the way. So it's a clearing process. And the vehicle that actually clears is the prana. Prana is what actually runs. They are mechanisms that actually run the whole system. Every organ, every tissue, every cell, everything is run by prana. And prana needs to clear the way. The thing about prana is that for it to do this clearing work, it has to be vital. Because the prana needs to combine. There's only 5 major pranas, but they need to combine, and they need to heat up and speed up, and then they move upwards. Once they've cleared the way, then the Kundalini Shakti can then rise up. And it's that rising, through that rising, we start to have these openings and glimpses and have these incredibly profound experiences that there's nothing that one can compare it to in ordinary life. They're just so mind-blowing. They're just so incredibly beautiful and glorious and mind-boggling. Possibly people who take psychedelic drugs and have extraordinary experiences. It probably would be similar if people have had that experience. But anyway, so for the pranas to be vitalized, a certain lifestyle makes it easier. What devitalizes our prana is stress. Doesn't matter what the stress is. So if you're overworking, if you're in a relationship that's problematic, if you've got addictions, if you're not getting enough sleep, your diet's bad, all those sorts of things. Really, essentially, we're talking about a kind of a lifestyle. And thousands of years ago, where this was a science, it was established as a science to raise people's Kundalini. In ancient India, people would be selected. And one of the things would be, this kind of vitality, this vitalized prana, because they knew that was required in order for the Shakti to rise. And then one can have a much smoother journey upwards, because if halfway up, one loses the vitality, it can take much longer to move through a particular area that needs to be cleared. It's a whole renovation process, and everything starts to get restored in the most beautiful way. And feeling her moving in your body is just exquisite. It's absolutely exquisite. So, that's the lifestyle that is optimized. And I help people develop the lifestyle, and they start to see immediate benefits. I've noticed as well from my reading and my direct experience, and I've put together loosely a model, and there's four awakenings. Awakening is also, I found, a bit of a misunderstood word. People think the only awakening is to wake up. In spiritual circles, that's what they talk about. But actually the first and probably the most important awakening is waking in. And what does waking in mean? Waking in is self-awareness work. It's like, why do I do what I do? And why do I not do what I want to do? We all have these values and we have these goals, and we don't want to fight with our nearest and dearest, but we end up getting triggered and doing that. And well, that dissipates our vitality, for one thing, and takes us to unhappiness and complicates our relationships. And many people are already on that path. If we're not on that path and we go and we move into the deeper Kundalini experiences and other awakenings, we take those parts of us that we don't understand and can't control with us, and it can be problematic. And that's why some gurus or teachers, spiritual teachers, have fallen into disrepute, because they haven't integrated their power issues, their sexuality issues, their money issues. So that work is really important to do. And it's personal mastery, it's relationship management, it's emotional intelligence, it's shadow work, it's all the stuff, ironically, that I did and studied. And when I went through my own awakening, I really was naive and thought that I wouldn't actually need to do that work, and that Kundalini Shakti would just burn it all away and I would just be perfected. But actually, I've discovered that it's a partnership between the divine and us, grace and effort together. When we make the effort, the divinity meets us. So it's like digging a tunnel from two different sides at the same time and meeting in the middle. So the second awakening, and by the way, these awakenings are not necessarily sequential and run parallel, and we're busy with all of them, until we're perfected. The second one is waking up, and that's the one that's most understood as an awakening. And that's waking Well, let me just say there's 3 centers of awakening. And the one is the mind, the one is the heart, and the other one is the body. Right now I'm talking about the waking up is the mind. And it's the transcendent awakening. And it's just exquisite. There's so much peace. The peace that Jesus said surpasseth understanding. My personal understanding of that, based on personal experience, is that it's beyond the mind. There aren't words for it. It's just incredible. And this peace is what we experience when we wake up. The thing is, we're not really finished. We may think we're done because we're so transcendent and we're so established in this exquisite peace, and there's a detachment that comes where nothing touches us. In myself, to be honest, I really thought I'm kind of getting near to being done.
You're done. You're perfected. You've arrived.
Absolutely. Well, nothing touched me, you know. And well, when I went to the next stage, I was rudely awakened. There was just the most beautiful morphine that was covering the deeper work in my heart that I needed to do in order to have unity consciousness. So that's the next awakening. That sometimes, in rare cases, one can have an awakening in the heart first and then in the mind later. There's tremendous variety with Kundalini Shakti, and it's endlessly creative, ingenious. So when one wakes, one has woken up, and now one needs to wake down.
Okay.
And down into the body, because we've got this body waking down.
So you go up and then you come down.
You come down, and sometimes you come down with a crash and a bump. It's bumpy down there. And when, as I was saying, the other center is the center of the body. So one awakens in the body, and when one awakens in the heart, and when one awakens in the heart, then one starts to have these feelings of the most intense love. And it's not the normal love that you feel, which is pretty amazing. You know, falling in love is a huge experience. And loving your children and loving your friends. The Greeks give all these words for different kinds of love, but this is divine love. And I remember the first deep one that I had, you just weep. And it's truly a feeling, you know, deep inside the heart. Well, actually the spiritual heart, which is just behind the physical heart, and it just opens and just takes everything in, and you love everything and you love everybody. And I just remember saying and writing, there is nothing more important than love. And even when we have near-death experiences, I've dipped into that literature, and people have a past life review. The only thing they're interested in, the only thing on your scorecard, if I can use that language, is how loving were you? They're not interested in how popular, how rich, how beautiful, how accomplished, how sporty, how intelligent. Only how much we loved.
Sorry to interrupt you there. You're pointing to many different things here, and unfortunately, I would love to be able to unpack more of this with you when you're talking about life reviews and scorecards and all of that. And I'm aware that the subject is so vast and rich.
Yes.
But just to try and keep the essence of, I'm hearing you say, first of all, there's a waking in, then there's a waking up, then there's a waking down.
Yes.
Where it's more embodied, it comes back into the body, and maybe working with your unresolved material and processes, possibly the shame there as well. The neglected parts of oneself, or ignored or avoided, or our wounds, our voids. And then the fourth piece of this awakening that you're talking to, what is that?
It's an awakening outwards. So it's your world work, and that's not, it's probably just your work in a new way. You know, you might have found your work, and it's nothing amazing and big and grand. It's touching people's lives. It's a smile. It may be more, but it's really just love, and the frequency that you now carry and that how that touches lives. They won't even know, but they just have a good experience with you, and that transforms the world in itself. So there's nothing grand that really needs to happen, actually.
Mm.
Mm. So that's it. All those stages and things that happen, it's valuable to have a guide. I personally didn't have a guide. I had the dream guide, and I had to. And it was very hard. It was very, very hard. But I guess that's why, you know, I can offer this in a particular way, because I had to pull together all that material, and then I did, while I was in my 7-year process, and I must just say, Anita, this is a very important point. You know, my process was very extreme. I'm noticing people, you know, having not having to withdraw from life, but mine was like that. I don't know anybody else actually who had to withdraw, but I noticed how divinity takes care of you, you know, because I actually couldn't work, and my money ran out, but I managed to actually start some spiritual counseling, and I was asked to do that, you know, through a dream, and then I started it, and so I started to have experience with how to guide somebody else through the process, and that helped set up this formula that I have to guide people like a mountain guide to the top of the mountain, to have the truth of themselves and the love that goes with it, initially temporarily, but as time goes by, it becomes permanent. I'm not done, not by a long way, but I can just say it gets better and better and better and better. And you never lose it once you reach a certain point. It's not like physically training where you get fit, and then if you get a cold, you're so depressed. I know, I used to be such a runner, you know, because you lose your fitness. It's not like that. Beyond a certain point, you never lose it again. Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, I can tell you a few other things if you want about what I also include in my offering. I like to do dream analysis, particularly the higher self dreams. In my psychology days, I was very keen on dream analysis, and it's been a huge part of my spiritual development, as you mentioned earlier, and I mentioned. I also, as an adjunct to the one-on-one work, my body has become tuned to be able to give energy transmission from the divine source level, and I use that to give healings and balance people. And I also have a little project of divine products, which you know about, and maybe we can talk about that in another interview, because that's a whole thing in itself. So yeah, I do bring the energy work in, and I do the dreams, and I'm very flexible in my formatting. I'll just, whatever the person's preference is, if the client likes unstructured, organic, flowing, I do that. And if somebody on the other extreme likes super structured, I've designed all sorts of protocols and processes and documents, and so yeah, there's a whole package ready.
Beautiful. And what I'm hearing in a nutshell is this amazing interplay of discipline on the one hand, and this arduous work and the efforting, and on the other hand, this amazing spontaneous, organic, fluid way of working and being, that you have the scale to balance both out, and meeting people where their needs are and where they're at in their stage of journey, which is
Absolutely
invaluable. That's invaluable.
I think that's, yeah, it's essential. And just, I just want to, I mentioned it, but I just want to highlight it again, if I may. And that's, people's processes are very different. My wife, for example, you know, mine was flashy, you know, and hers is so gentle and quiet, you know, and incremental and so solid, you know. And I've noticed a few people around me like that. So yeah, mine was I think it just to prepare me to do this work. You know, I had to go through so many different experiences, but I'm noticing in my clients, the ones I'm already working with on this Kundalini Care, they're all having such different experiences. They're variations on a similar thing, but we can talk about that another time. I know you know a lot about that in your own right.
Thank you, Ev. And it's been great having you on the call today. And yeah, opening up perhaps many, many conversations to come. Let's see what divine intervention comes in and what Kundalini Shakti wants of you, and through your services to reach into the hearts of people and help them on their transformation journeys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you to the audience for listening, and we hope that this reached home in the way that it needed to for you, listening and watching, and perhaps even feeling the energy on the call if you're sensitive to energy. And so innerFLOW is here to provide these services, and please get in touch with us. You can visit our website, innerflow.co.za, and we look forward to your feedback, to hearing from you, and any questions that you may have. So be well, and may the force of Kundalini Shakti be alive and well and active, doing its thing